Welcome to the Culture is Healing podcast, brought to you by Checking In. At Checking In, we create customized wellness tools for First Nations communities, centering each nation's language, culture, and traditions to support healing and well-being for their people. To learn more about our work at Checking In, please visit our website at checkingin.co. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy this episode. Aichka. Aichquel, Ichual, Anthapat, Hokuletsat, Neats Dominus, Halalt, Powitson, Liaxon. Hello, everyone. My traditional name is Hokuletsat. My English name is George Harris Jr., and I'm calling in from my home here in Staminas. This is the community that my father is from. This is the community that my mother married into. And this is the community my siblings and I were raised in. I belong to George Harris Sr. and my late mother, Sylvia Harris. My grandparents from my father's side of my family are the late Lawrence and Irene Harris. My grandparents from my mother's side of my family are the late Bernard and Nora George. My familial connections to Halalt come from my mother, Sylvia, and my grandmother, Nora. My familial connections to Cowitson come from my grandfather, Bernard. Through both sides of my family, I have familial connections to Liaxon. The name Hokulitsa is a name that has been passed down from generation to generation throughout my family. My father carries that name. He has passed that name on to myself and to other family members as well. And welcome, everyone, to the Culture is Healing podcast. Once again, my name is Hokulitsa, or in English name is George Harris Jr., and I have the honor and privilege of having a new friend of mine, Richard Van Camp, joining me today here on the podcast, and I'd love to open the floor for Richard to be able to introduce himself to everyone. Haichka.
Right on. Haichka, Maasi Cho, Komodo Hoizi, George Harris Jr., Maasi Cho. Thanks for having me. What a pleasure to see you this morning. I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Treaty 6 territory, and I want to say in my mother's language, Tlicho Dene, Komodo Hoizi, which means good morning.
Mm.
Richard Van Camp, CA. My name is Richard Van Camp. Si Hobatsa Gotsoete Haniho Minten Day. I was born in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, Treaty 8 country, and I live with my family here in Treaty 6 country. I'm the proud husband of Kiwi Martin. Thank God she married me. And I'm also the proud father of Idzazi Van Camp, who just turned 11 and has just donated Idzazi's hair to kids with cancer. Idzazi grew his hair so long, and we're really proud of Idzazi for donating this beautiful hair that had never been touched with any dyes or anything like that. So we just mailed off that last week to kids with cancer. And I encourage everybody watching now that if you've got long hair and you think it's time, why not donate your sweet medicine to somebody who really needs it? What a beautiful way to be in the world. Hey, George?
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. Yeah. That's amazing. And, I know there's so many people, who are, affected by cancer, whether it's, themselves personally or family members, loved ones, and who would love that love and support through, some hair that is donated. Our hair definitely holds special medicine for our people, and it's always something that is cherished and taken care of in a very good manner. So thank you for sharing, Ichka.
Hitchka.
Yeah, and so as we kind of move into our podcast and some of the discussions that we always love to carry here, the name of our podcast is Culture is Healing. And I know for, so many of our people, um, culture is healing means so much to us. We've had to continue to exist in this world that, definitely has a lot of hardship towards our people, and the resiliency that comes from our ancestors and passed on to us is often passed through our culture. And that really is something that really helps continue to give us strength to carry on and keep continuing to put that one foot forward each day, to keep pressing on. And we're always looking to our cultural ways of being. And so when I say, culture is healing, just wanted to know, Richard, what does that mean to you when I say that?
Well, it's so interesting, George. So much Cho for your question. So when you first wrote to me and I saw culture is healing, that's when I knew I really wanted to talk to you because, growing up in Fort Smith I was born September 8, 1971. I'm 53 now. I'm climbing my little hill to divinity, George. I'm halfway home, baby. Anyways, so growing up in Fort Smith, we really had the best of the best because we're the gateway to Wood Buffalo National Park and we're the beginning of Highway 5. You can go anywhere in the whole wide world. I really appreciate that teaching from Tim Gauthier, who works for Wood Buffalo National Park. We always used to say, oh man, we're the end of Highway 5. We're the place that the world forgot. And one day he just told us right off in a good uncle way. He said, what are you talking about? We're the beginning of the world, right? We're the beginning of Highway. You can go anywhere in the world that you want because you're from Fort Smith, Northwest Territories. So our little community is 2,500 people. We're officially quadrilingual. So Chipewyan, Cree, French, and English are spoken at any given time. And we're the Métis capital of the Northwest Territories. We're the garden capital of the Northwest Territories. We got brown bears, black bears. Oh my, we got brown bears, well, outside of our community, hopefully not too far in, but we've got buffalo 40 miles one way. We've got bison 40 miles the other. We grew up with whooping cranes, sandhill cranes, the pelicans, like the Slave River. So I was raised probably like you in the 70s and 80s in culture camps all the time. So my mom worked at Uncle Gabe's, my dad worked for the college. So if we weren't at Sioux Lake during the summer, then we were at Pine Lake and Salt River or at winter camp or fall camp, courtesy of Uncle Gabe's Friendship Center. We were always outside. So I was in Beavers, I was in Scouts, I was in Venturers. I was there when the BMX bike came north. So we had BMX, we had mountain bikes. So I was raised at a time with the Grassy Junior High and the Jolly Green Giant and the Price is Right. So I really feel that when they say when you have abundance, you want abundance for other people. And I feel that, like, George, I'm just gonna ask you a question. Aren't you glad you were born before the internet?
Oh, for sure.
Because I would have been the worst of the worst. I would have been gaming, I would have been online
Mm,
all the time. So I know what's possible when you have a real childhood and you're outside all the time. So last night here in Edmonton, all the kids, we've got so many kids up and down the street, they're having a Nerf war. They're
mm,
running around, they're LARPing, they're playing in and out of the yard. We've got raspberries and strawberries. The kids are devouring them, and my wife and I sat
mm.
outside. We got to watch until it became too intense with the Nerf bullets flying and all that good stuff. So our wish as parents, Kiwi and I, is always with our little one outside. Keep them busy, keep them outside because that was how we were raised. We want you, video games and the internet, it's not going anywhere. You're going to have that forever and ever and ever. But right now, you're 11, and what we foster is we want to be known as the parents that'll keep an eye on your kids when they're outside playing. That's what we want. So, what does culture and healing mean to me? Well, my mother, Rosa Washi, so I'm 53, she just turned 74. She, probably like your family, George, my mother was stolen when she was 5 years old, and she attended two different residential schools. She went to Brainerd Hall and Grandin College. So her number was 12. She went for 12 years. And so, as happy as I was in the North in the 70s and 80s, I was part of the KISS Army. Did you join the KISS Army, George?
Yeah, my brother-in-law, he was
Yeah,
yeah.
we were in it. I wanted to be Peter. I wanted to be the drummer. I wanted to be
Mm,
Peter Chris. I thought he was the coolest of the coolest, right? I love Beth, that song. So as happy as I was watching, The Price is Right and Battlestar Galactica and Hawk the Slayer, all that good stuff, reading Savage Sword of Conan, I'd always sensed that our family and our community was in the shadow of something big that had happened, and nobody talked about it. We didn't hear about residential schools growing up. And I always wondered, like, why does the North drink so hard? Why is
mm,
alcohol so brutal here in the North? And I was a guard for the RCMP, and I just saw the most beautiful men in our town losing everything because of alcohol. And that's really why I never started
mm,
drinking, smoking, doing drugs and gambling and all that stuff. It was actually pop culture that saved my bacon because I always had a job. I was a paper boy, probably like you. I was a paper boy quite young. I delivered the Slave River Journal and the Edmonton Journal. I've always worked. I helped out at
mm,
the Slave River Journal in the dark room. I was their janitor. Then I was pumping gas for Kelly Steed. He paid $14 an hour. Such a cool place to work. So I've
mm,
always had my own money. And so I've
mm,
always been collecting comic books and G.I. Joe and Star Wars and He-Man. Man, I had the coolest room back in '89. I wish you could have seen it. It's probably the way that my office is set up right now. I got a lot of Star Wars toys. I'll tell
yeah.
you right now. So, but let's get back to that shadow and why we're here today and why I do what I do.
Mm,
Growing up, I had a lot of pop culture and we had the best of the North because we were always visiting, right? My parents were
mm,
taxidermists. And then when my parents got their divorce, I had a new father, best dad in the whole wide world for me, Jack Van Camp. So he worked for Arctic College. So we always had a home filled with records,
mm,
music, stories, laughter. And we were always visiting. We were either at somebody's house or somebody was at our house.
mm, mhm,
And Marlene Evans, I really want to honor her. She's my tough auntie. She's adopted me. I hope she'll agree with that. Oh, I've certainly adopted her. I love her so much. She's like my second mom. She and I just had a big conversation on the phone, and she said, and this is really important. She said, when I used to come visit you, what did your mom always say? And I said, well, she always said, oh, you boys, we have company. Come listen.
mm,
Come listen to how the world really works. You want to hear about ghost stories, love stories, makeup stories, breakup stories, spirit stories. You want to hear about the haunted wood stove of Fort Smith that tormented a family. It's all here at the supper table. And
mm,
it's all here at the supper table where you're going to learn about the men to stay away from.
mm,
And you're going to hear about the dangerous families in our community. It's all here. Everything you want to know, it's all here if you listen.
mm,
And she just shared with me, how much has changed because now when you go visiting, where's the kids? They're
mm,
downstairs or they're
yeah.
in their room with the door closed. So they're not getting those stories. They're not getting the warnings. They're not getting the wisdom and the teachings and the joy that we had growing up. So that's why when we have visitors, we really listen to what our guests have to say and we spoil them. So
Mm,
why my big day, which I want to share with you, George, about when everything made sense, was when I graduated from high school in 1989. I had to go back for half a semester to get my matriculation. And when I graduated from PWK High, I decided that I wasn't going to go to college or university for 1 year
mm,
because I made a deal that I wasn't going to pretend anymore that I knew what I was going to do with my life. Unlike all my friends, they all seem to have a plan. Oh, I'm going to be a doctor. Oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. Oh, I'm going to be a teacher. Oh, I'm going to be an ambulance tech. Oh, I'm going to be a certified chef. Everybody took off, and I was one of the few 19-year-olds in Fort Smith left behind.
mm,
And I realized at that point that I was really starving for culture. Yes, we had culture at home. My grandparents lived in Betchoko, which is quite a ways away from Fort Smith. They spoke very little English, very powerful medicine people. And I always, in that shadow, would wonder, why can't I just speak to my own grandparents? Why do I have to go visit them and talk to my auntie and my uncle and my Etsy and my Etse, my grandma, my grandpa? Why do I always need translators to talk to my own blood? Right? What happened? Where was that scythe between generations, right? And I think you know the truth that it was those residential schools, right? So we weren't talking about it yet, but here's how I found my way to culture. And, I know you're going to ask at the end, what's your advice to everybody? And I'll tell it to you right now. My advice to everybody watching this is if you're lonesome for culture and you're lonesome for community, and I really appreciate our dear friend David Robertson. He said recently, community is the answer to everything.
Mm,
And so many of us are starving for community, starving to be heard, welcomed, adored,
mm,
feasted, hosted, celebrated, right? So I decided that I was life costs money. I mean, Savage Sword of Conan ain't being published once a month for free, George, right? I
mhm,
needed my own Sunyao. I needed my own Samba Cho. So I decided that I would guard prisoners for the RCMP because they paid $24 an hour. Now, the problem with that was because I was the new hire, I had the worst shift. It's called the C shift. So you start at 11 o'clock at night and you guard prisoners till 7 in the morning. Sounds
mm,
good when you get the job, but try staying awake when they crank the heat at the cop
mm,
shop because they want everybody just to fall asleep. You're not allowed to fall asleep, by the way. So what happened was I became a day sleeper. So I'd work at 11 o'clock at night, work till 7 in the morning, get back to my little house, have a nap, and I'd be wide awake at 2. And I'd have until 11 o'clock at night. And then I realized that our community needed a volunteer to drive the handy bus, to drive the elders around.
mm,
George, that is why you and I are having this conversation today.
mm,
Volunteering and driving the handy bus and having the privilege of driving Bush Cree Elder Irene Sanderson, Chipewyan Elder Maria Brown, Dora Taranjo, um, Amelia Gatrix, Helena Mandible. Like I got to drive, and my inheritance as a northerner really began in a new and beautiful way when I was 19 because I got to drive all the elders around, and I guarantee I've been to more bingos than anybody listening. It was bingo,
mm,
bingo, bingo, and driving certain elders to physio or to go to Kaiser's on Thursday and the Northern Store on Friday for their shopping, or sometimes they just needed to pick up because we had a wheelchair lift. We were wheelchair accessible.
mhm,
So I would drive elders to visit their buddies, and then I'd be welcomed into the house for, tea and bannock get-togethers, great coffee, good cooking, and most importantly, stories, teachings, and traditions. And so I was so lucky and I actually have it here. I'll show you what happened. So the biggest day in my life as a young person was one day I was driving Chipewyan Elder Maria Brown around,
mhm.
and Maria Brown was curing asthma in our community. Do you know how?
Wow.
Goose grease.
Mm,
Goose grease. And she said that her father had gifted her that medicine when
mm,
she was 14. And she said, the thing about Indian medicine, Richard, is it doesn't matter what the medicine is, it's who's giving you the medicine.
mm, mhm.
I never forgot that.
Wow.
And one day I was driving Maria Brown, Chipewyan Elder, bush cook. I mean, she could cook for 20 or 200 at the drop of a hat. She was such
Mm,
an incredible chef. My dad hired her and David King for the summer when he'd take all the college students out in the RRTP program for 6 weeks out to Sioux Lake. So one day I was driving Maria Brown. I think it was 20 or 30 below. It was February. We're going down McDougall. I think I was taking her to Kaiser's. And she said, did I ever tell you about the time I died, Richard? And I was 19 years old. And I said, what? What? And she was
mm,
sitting in the back of the handy bus. And she said, oh, yes, I passed away in my sleep. I woke up
mm,
one day and I just wasn't feeling like myself. And I decided, I had so much to do. And I just said, well, why don't I go back to bed and have a little nap? She said, I laid down in my little sewing room and closed my eyes, and I must have passed away in my sleep. You want to know what heaven's like, Richard? And I said, I'm driving. I said, yeah, yes. What's heaven like? And she goes, heaven's like West Edmonton Mall. Heaven's like West Edmonton Mall. There's all these floors. There's all these bridges. Everybody's visiting. Everybody's got
mm,
black hair. Everyone's 24. And everybody's all gussied up and they're just laughing and visiting and hugging. And the
mm,
colors on the walls are the colors of the Northern Lights. And she shared with me seeing the other side. And
Mm.
you can actually listen. If you go to Richard Van Camp's SoundCloud, you can listen to what I'm about to tell you. When she told me that story, I felt that ancient Tlicho Dene blood wake up inside of me.
Mm.
And I said, Maria, after I heard this story, when she talked about everything she saw on the other side, she saw her late father, her late mother, her late husband, Jean Louis. She talked about everything she saw. And then she talked about a voice. And she heard a
Mm.
voice say, Maria Brown, you can't stay. You still have work. You have to
Mm.
go back. She didn't want to come back. And she woke up. She was sent back and she woke up and she was so cold. She said she must have passed away for quite some time because her blood had turned to slush.
Mm.
It took her a long time to get warm again. And so I said, Maria, oh my God,
Mm.
we gotta, can I, go to Radio Shack and buy one of those little tape recorders and come to your house tomorrow, and can I record you? And can you just tell me that story again? Because can you imagine how many people who are really hurting and suffering and missing their loved ones? Do
Mm.
you know how much comfort? Can you imagine the peace you would bring to so many lives who are looking for answers? Because she said, you know what heaven feels like, Richard? It's love. It's all love because you're home. When our work is done, we're called home. And it's, yes, it's good to miss your loved ones, but you need to know that their work is done.
Mm.
And I said, Maria, you gotta let me tape record you.
Mm.
Please. I said, I'll come over tomorrow and I'll go home and I'll type up everything you say word for word.
Mm.
And then once you look at it, with your permission, my mom works at Uncle Gabe. She's got access to a huge photocopier. I can make 50 copies and I could drop it off at your house and you could give it out to people who you think might want to hear this story. And she said, sure, come by tomorrow and you can tape record me. So, George, I went to Radio Shack, Fort Smith,
Mm.
Northwest Territories. I bought my little James Bond tape recorder. This
Mm.
is a macro cassette, and I recorded Maria Brown. And
Mm.
when COVID came to Canada, I got a little grant to digitize all my interviews with elders. So if you go to Richard Van Camp SoundCloud, you can listen to Maria Brown in 1991 in her home
Mm.
sharing the story of what happened when she passed away. And then next year I got to interview Glenn Douglas, who was Okanagan and Penticton. I
Mm.
didn't know he served in World War II. I didn't know he served in Vietnam, and I certainly didn't know he served in the Korean War. And he shared a story with me about getting hit with a concussion grenade that killed him. And he too saw the other side.
Mm.
And he talked about the voice. He talked about everything he saw on the other side. And you can listen to this interview because I digitized it with his permission. And he talked about the voice saying, Glenn Douglas, you
Mm.
can't stay. You still have work. You will be told many times in this life you will never walk again. You will walk again. Have faith.
Mm.
Glenn Douglas, you have to go back. And he was sent back. He ended up waking up in his own body bag.
Wow.
Yeah, and he shared that story with me. So you can listen to it. You can, so how I got here today is a proud guest in your circle was that being adopted into various families,
Mm.
stories, traditions, teachings by volunteering changed my life forever. And it was by interviewing my elders and knowledge keepers and being able to pass on those recordings to loved ones of those great speakers has been my greatest joy. And I'll give you an example. So 2 days ago, somebody in our community, Fort Smith, just said, does anybody have any carvings from my father? And I don't, but I'd interviewed a great carver years ago, probably 25 years ago.
Mm.
And I had that recording and I digitized it. And within probably 2 minutes, I was able to send it to her so she could hear his voice again.
Mm.
There's a program called Vomo, VOMO, that can transcribe word for word with 99% accuracy. I mean, you still have to go through it just to make sure, especially when
Mm.
somebody speaks Chipewyan or Bush Cree or Michif, you have to be really careful.
Mm.
But the conversation, my interview with her father, her late father, was transcribed word for word perfectly, and I was able to send that too because the audio recording wasn't the very best and it was from a long time ago. So I said, here's the audio recording. and here's the full transcript. And that was done in minutes. And
Mm.
she was like, oh my goodness, just to even hear his voice again, thank you so much. That's what I live for, George, is when
Mm.
somebody says, does anybody, have any teachings around this? Or did anybody know my late auntie, Dot Desjardins, from Fort Smith? I was like, I have got the
Mm.
most beautiful audio interview in her house. And anyways, what I can do, George, is I'll send you a bunch of my interviews
Mm.
that are done through video, because we were able to interview many of our Fort Smith elders 9 years ago.
Mm.
Thank goodness we did, because we were able to interview the creme de la creme of elders. And in 9 years, so many of those elders have since passed. And the
Mm.
whole purpose, and we did this with their permission, was that we would upload these videos and the North and the world would have these stories and these teachings forever. So I
Mm.
know I'm proof that culture is healing. I'm proof,
Mm.
because I think that the 53-year-olds, my generation, your generation, we're the ones that are working so hard as second generation residential school survivors.
Yeah.
We're the ones that are working so hard to reclaim as much as we can that
Mm.
was almost lost because of residential schools and the foster care system and the 60s scoop and through forced sterilization, and for every tooth in the jaw of colonization that's
Mm.
come our way time and time and time again. So I'm really proud to be a good listener, to
Mm.
be a really respectful nephew, to always record with permission, to pay
Mm.
people very well, show up with gifts, show up with food, and to be accountable for my actions. I'm really, really proud of that. That, when somebody, asks, does anybody have anything from, Fort Simpson? I'm able to say, oh, I'm so glad you asked, because,
Mm.
I was there 20 years ago and this is my story. Da, 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 da. You can ask so and so about it. I love it when someone is just so grateful, like, oh my goodness, you have no idea. And if maybe I don't have a story, but I certainly know how to steer people towards, our archives in the Northwest Territories at our museum. Also, the Roman Catholic Diocese in Yellowknife has thousands of photos from a long time ago.
Mm.
And I've been really lucky. If you want to see, this is just Fort Smith gossip, but one of my favorite things to do when I'm in Yellowknife is go to the RC diocese and, with permission, go downstairs and open the books from Fort Fitzgerald, Salt River, Fort Smith. A long time ago, a lot of the priests and nuns were really good photographers. And so what I do is I use my phone. Um, I just want to get into the technical gossip of things. Everybody here has a notepad on their phone, right?
Mm.
Notepad. I don't know if you've ever used this before, but when you open your notepad, you hit the little paper click and it says scan documents.
Mm.
So one day I was bored out of my tree and I went to the diocese, and this program is it's so wonderfully intuitive. You don't even have to remove the photos from the photo albums. You don't
Mm.
have to take them out. You can actually shoot through the protective film and you can have a professional super HDR scan of a photo.
Mm.
And the only reason I got 78 photos in one day, we're talking baptism photos, we're talking wedding photos, we're talking on the land photos. 78 photos was my phone died. And
Mm.
I just got man mad. So, when you get man mad and you just start pouting? So I went home, I got back on my mom's Wi Fi and I charged my phone. And I
Mm.
was able to upload, 78, I think it's 78 photos in one night to our Memories of Fort Smith NWT page.
Mm.
And do you know how many people have never seen photos of themselves as children, George?
Mm.
A lot. And so
Mm.
all night, my phone was like, zzz, 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 zzz. I was so proud because
Mm.
people were so happy to have these photos back online because you can share them right away.
Mm.
And one of my greatest accomplishments was, I love it. I encourage everybody here, if you can, next time you're watching one of your favorite shows, go through your photo albums and write names on the back of photos. We're really lucky that at the diocese in Yellowknife, a lot of these photos have names. So I would take the front, right?
Mm.
And then and a lot of times you could see through the plastic and see the names on the back, right? So I
Mm.
uploaded that. And so there was one photo that was really beautiful. It's a mom holding a child like this.
Mm.
And I put it up there, and I remember just saying, does anybody know who these two are? What a gorgeous photo. And within 20 minutes, this lady goes, "Oh, mom, is that us?" And the
Mm.
mom says, "Oh my goodness, was I ever that young?" And they start laughing. They'd never seen that photo of themselves, right?
Mm.
So that's what I live for, George. I live like to write stories and to share stories, but I also live my greatest joy, one of my greatest joys in life professionally, and just as a human being, is digitizing, uploading with permission,
Mm-hmm.
transcribing, getting good interviews to people who are searching for peace, affirmation, pride,
Mm.
inheritance. That's what I love doing, and that I see good medicine in that.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And
It
I
only
know
took me
for
8 hours to answer your first question. You
uh
must be emotionally exhausted. You're getting a perm, bud. Lots of hot air, eh?
I think I hadn't shared with you. Today's the 2 year anniversary of my mom's passing today, and so yeah, it's been a little bit of an emotional day for me. I started off my morning fairly early, carrying on my traditions that have been passed on to me around grief and loss, and so hearing some of your stories of your elders and their stories is very powerful and very impactful for me personally on my own grief and loss journey. So it's
Hmm.
really encouraging to hear that's something that we don't shy away from in our indigenous communities. We talk about our grief and our loss, and the fact that we had the opportunity to love someone so greatly. And so
Hmm.
yeah, so that's thank you for sharing, and allowing me to um you know express and share my own feelings around today. And thank you so much.
I see. Thank you for sharing. So, George, I'm going to ask you a question. Has your mom left you any signs? Has she come back from the other side to give you a hug?
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
share how? Like, as
Yeah.
so many of us are grieving. So, how did you know? And I'll share with you, but I want to hear from you first.
Yeah. So my mom, her favorite animal on this world was a hummingbird, and so I always kind of had that feeling and that connection. When I got to see hummingbirds and stuff, that was my like sign that
Mhm.
mom was like checking in on me. And last weekend, I had the opportunity to go visit my friend John David Norgate out in Salt Spring, and we're sitting in his backyard. We're just finished having lunch, and um, there was a we were sitting near the back of their yard, and there was a one of David's plants was right beside me, and on the other side he was sitting, and hummingbird came in and just like was really close. I could literally have like just reached, and not reached far either, just kind of just bent my arm out a little bit and I would have been able to touch it.
Hmm.
And it flew around this plant a little bit, and then it like stopped and kind of like looked around, and I was just like I was very emotional because I was like, oh man, that felt like really close. Like this could have been mom checking on me kind of thing. And it was silent. Like when that bird came in, everyone just stopped talking too. It was just one of those moments that you knew something else was happening. And so for me, that was like my latest experience around that feeling where,
Of
I felt like my mom was kind of checking in on me and making sure I'm okay.
course she was, bud. Of course. That was a hug from the divine. Your mom's always going to be checking up on you all. Do you look for those hummingbirds? Do you know what the Simshan call hummingbirds? Hair stealers.
Mm,
Yeah, I was in Hartley Bay, and I
mm-hmm.
mean that is just a palace of hummingbirds. And somebody, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name, said in our language the word for hummingbird is hair stealer. Do you know why?
For building their
Yeah,
homes.
they're always looking for fur and they're always looking for webs
Mm.
so that they can gather it to make their little. When's the last time you seen a little hummingbird nest?
Oh, it's been a while.
Okay, well, you look for those hugs. You know, sometimes it's a bird, sometimes it's a feather,
Mm.
sometimes it's a ladybug, sometimes or it's that perfect song when you need it the most. You know what they say about little boys? They say every little boy is his mother's greatest teacher. Every little girl is her father's greatest teacher.
Mm.
And so you are your mom's greatest teacher. Of course you're her baby. Of course she's always gonna come check up on you. You know, Geraldine Minosa passed that sharing to me that every little boy is his mother's greatest teacher. Every little girl is her father's greatest teacher. And I want to add, I do believe that the two spirited, the sacred ones, they're everyone's teachers.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, thank you for sharing, and thank you for allowing me to share my feelings and my
Of
tears
course.
with you.
Of
Appreciate that.
course. Of course. Anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah. And so as we're kind of looking into cultural ways of being, and we have the opportunity to witness and attend a lot of amazing cultural activities. Are there any that you've had the opportunity to attend that hold a special place in your heart?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because I was a handy bus driver in Fort Smith, I had the teachings of Fort Smith elders, and I have, teachings from Clecho elders like Rosa Mantla, Terry Naskin, Tony Rebeska. So I'll just give you a couple. So when Idzazi was born,
Mm-hmm.
the little belly button nub falls off either on day 12 or day 14. I just finished interviewing Dot Desjardins in Fort Smith, and she said that, when a baby's belly button nub falls off, it is such a profound day because that's the last physical link that a baby has with their mom. And there's medicine in that little belly button nub. And so she said for her children, the first one, her daughter, she put her daughter's belly button nub in her sewing basket, in her little sewing kit, because she wanted to pass on her medicine for sewing to her
Mm.
daughter. And now her daughter is one of the greatest sewers, beaters, loomers,
Mm.
darners, waterproof stitching. So she passed that good medicine on using that belly button up. The second is she buried it in the backyard so that her son would always know where he was from.
Mm.
And the third was Dot went down to the Slave River and offered it to the river and said, from now on, because they had a couple drownings, you need to protect my family and we're going to protect you.
Mm.
We're going to start wearing life jackets. We're going to go for swimming lessons. My grandbabies are going to be lifeguards. And we're going to protect you because downstream there's Fort McMurray and there's people that would love to poison you just to make more money. But
Mm.
if you take care of my family, we'll protect you. And
Mm.
so she offered that belly button nub to the Slave River. And I thought,
Mm.
my God, that's so beautiful. So when Azazi was born, we had a little feast under a full moon, and we buried Azazi's little belly button nub under the tree. We call it the auntie tree in our yard.
Mm.
And then Rosa Mantla said, until your baby's voice changes, you can't do Idzazi's birthday laundry with anyone else's because your medicine might confuse or might chase away Idzazi's medicine.
Mm.
So there's different traditions, like always not letting anyone step over your shoes or your hat, or there's
Mm.
all these little quiet things that happen, or we don't put water on the ground. This was a teaching given to me by elders up in Delaney, that even as I'm talking to you, George, I have a little place to put water,
Mm.
because I was told that water is life.
Mm.
And there was a prophet named Ea in Delaney who foresaw the future, and he said future wars aren't going to be about money or gold or oil, it'll be about clean water. So
Mm.
we have a responsibility that when we're holding water, we cradle water just the way water cradled us in the womb. Our
Mm.
whole life revolves around what should be clean water. So it starts with us to honor and protect every glass of water. Also, if it's a glass of apple juice or orange juice or tea or coffee, we still cradle anything with water to show respect to those spirits.
Mm,
Little, like, there's so many little things that happen in our home every day that most people wouldn't recognize, but I'm really proud that we have a safe home, sober home, a house filled with music, laughter,
mm,
stories, snuggles, kisses. Like, this is the house of a million kisses. I don't think anybody gets too many kisses any time, but we try very hard this year,
mm,
just or every day, just to really have fun, celebrate. I love our house is safe. when
mm,
when kids come over, there's snacks, there's water, lots of laughter. No screen time. That kids are, if when they're over there, we're here to play, and we got lots of Lego,
mm,
Warhammer, Dungeons and Dragons.
mm.
Basically what we grew up with. It's basically the '80s still here in our house, right?
Right on.
Imagination, play, freedom, have fun.
Mm. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, you're only going to be 11 once, so
Hmm.
why not make the most of it?
Yeah. No, that's so cool. Yeah, I know for me, like I was just reflecting on, um, a time that I can remember. I went back home to my mom's community, which is not far from here, and my uncle, my mom's younger brother, was hosting a ceremony, and um, my cousin, her husband was helping with the ceremony, and he came up to my father and was like, "Oh, you're stateless." And so it's my dad's wife, my mom, um, is asking if you can open the ceremony with a song. And my dad, he agreed, and so he looked to my oldest sister who was there, and then of course my sister kind of looked over to me like, all right, we gotta do this for mom. Oh, okay. So we got up and we sang my dad's honor and celebration song, and we were all fairly emotional. And then we went and sat back down, and the ceremony had taken place. And at the end of the ceremony, yet again, Johnny came back and was like, would your stylist, and since he's talking to my dad, your stylist is asking if you can sing the Stamina song. And I was like, oh, wow, here we go. And it was very fitting because my mom loved, like, one, we all sang together, and so it was really cool that we got to do that to honor her in, you know before and after this ceremony. So that was like something that was very special for our whole family, not just our immediate family, but it was shared with my uncle and my cousins, and so it was really really awesome to be back in the community my mom was from and share those songs. And that was powerful.
Hmm,
Absolutely love it.
good for you.
Yeah.
Glad you have that. That's medicine for your heart, hey? Your
Oh, for sure.
spirit. Yeah, you'll
Yeah.
always have that. And I bet you there were people watching going, I want that for us.
Mm.
A year from now, I want to be able to stand with my family and sing.
Yeah. Most definitely. Yeah, and so as we're kind of looking at a little bit deeper dive into some of our cultural ways, we have had the privilege of having a lot of teachings shared with us. And I was going to ask you if there are any teachings that have been shared with you, that you carry, close to your heart.
Hmm. Well, as soon as you shared, George, I wanted to say, I was born in Treaty 8 country. We live in Treaty 6 country here in Edmonton. And so we've been very lucky to be welcomed into ceremony here in Treaty 6 territory by Mush and Bob Cardinal and Dwayne Donald. And so I've been asked to be a doorman, several times at the sweat, and also
Mm-hmm.
to help out, whenever they call. I always do my best to say yes. And I am the worst escapio. I'm the worst doorman in the history of sweat lodges because I drop things, I forget to do certain things, I reach through the wrong window. But one thing I want to share is that, when you come to our get-togethers, as Indigenous people, what you don't realize is the laughter and the teasing, and that it's okay.
Yeah.
It's always about intention, that you're doing your best. And so, a long time ago, my grandparents, when they were still with us, Pierre and Melanie Washi, they were asking about me going to school in the British Columbia, working on my undergrad and my master's. And I mentioned that I was going to start helping out at the Sweat down at the UBC House of Learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember feeling something change when they were hearing about that. And then
Mm.
my mom got a phone call that night from my grandma, my Etsi, Melanie Washi. Her Indian name was Mani, and she basically said, "We don't want our grandson going into the sweat lodge because that's not our way. He can help out, and with the fire and the rocks and all that, that's good. But Grandpa says that, when you go into a sweat, they put a blanket around you. Their medicine is really strong. And Woodsaba, your grandpa, says that he could lose you if he ever has to work on you, even from the other side, by taking off all those blankets. So you're not to go inside." And I never forgot that. So I've never been in a sweat lodge, and Bob and Dwayne know that. And that's why I'm so happy to be a doorman. I'm really proud when I'm called.
Mm-hmm.
It comes with lots of responsibility. My job is to make sure that everybody, much like a guard for the RCMP, my job is to keep everybody safe so they
Mm-hmm.
can focus on their own healing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we talk about reconciliation, and I'll just share something really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
A long time ago, there was a willow sweat, and we were out at Enoch, and a big storm was rolling in. And as a doorman, you're not allowed to leave your post, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I watched everybody gather, what needed to be done to prepare for this wind that was coming. And I looked around, and everyone who was helping was not Indigenous.
Mm.
Everybody who was in the lodge, I believe half were non and half were Indigenous. This was one of those sweats where they were welcoming allies.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this is reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
When allies show up to help Indigenous people return to their whole selves.
Mm.
Isn't that beautiful? It's easy. So anyone listening right now, my message is, I think, pretty simple. I've never seen anyone turned away from
Mm.
ceremony when they show up to help.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every time that I blow it, all I receive is gentle teasings because
Mm.
they know he's doing his best.
Yeah.
It's not his way. Son of a gun, he always says yes every time that we call. Let's give that guy a break. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really proud to be a helper.
Mm. That's beautiful. I love that. I know when I was when I had the opportunity to work for my nation, we had just built a sweat lodge in our community, and that's traditionally not our people's ways either, but we've kind of adopted it into our community. There's a few community members who have their own personal sweats that built behind their homes or beside their homes or on their property somewhere. And I had the opportunity to go and visit Chief Daryl Bob up in Lillooet, and attended his sweat ceremony, and it was beautiful. It was such an amazing experience. So many amazing teachings shared, and all of that, really came about through, relationship building. And I got to meet him. He came to our community through a mutual friend, and we met there. And then I saw him. We were at Gathering Wisdom, and he was one of the elders who shared their story about residential school. And it was tough to hear. And afterwards, all I did was just went and checked on him, just make sure he was okay. And we shared a hug, and then yeah, he invited us up to Lillooet. So our myself and my bro Thomas, we call him Bombo, we all through both of our works had combined to do a sweat lodge project, and we wanted to have members of our community to experience other sweats as well. And so we had the funds to go and do that. So we took a group up to Lillooet, and yeah, it was an amazing experience. And I remember we got there, and we were just asking, like, what can we do? What can we do to help you right now? We want to thank you for your willingness to invite us to come to your home, to your ceremony. And he was like, "Oh, I don't need anything, you know, spectacular from any of you." He's like, "I want you to be here and enjoy yourselves, but if you have the energy and your body feels okay, would you mind splitting some wood for us?" Sure. So there's a few of us who were able-bodied to go and split some wood, and so yeah, we just helped split some wood, and actually we brought some cedar blocks that we had in our territory that we had received, and so I brought some up because he was using some for carving, and so I brought a dozen cedar blocks up for him to use for that purpose. So it was just really nice to be able to give back, and it wasn't anything spectacular that he was asking of us. Just split some wood for him. And yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, sometimes it's just about showing up, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and thinking about we've had the opportunity, and you've shared quite a few teachings with everyone here today and myself. I was going to see if there's any other teachings that you'd be willing to share with our listeners today.
Well, I just want to say, I don't know if I've given you any teachings. I've given you some pretty sweet gossip. That's about it. But our Dene laws, the first law is share what you have. And
Mm,
so it's really important to me that every time that I show up for anything, I always bring gifts.
mm,
That's really important as Northerners. I always say Northerners are the hobbits of Canada. All we want to do is cook for you and treat you right.
mm,
I love, being a Northerner. I'm really proud to be from Fort Smith, and I love really representing the North and my family in a really good way. As I said, I'm 53 now, and one of my greatest joys is mentoring and cheerleading. I love seeing people succeed.
mm,
I love it when I can help somebody get that much closer to a book deal or an
mm,
acting opportunity, or and if you're an illustrator, to get in with one of the publishers that I work with. I love now this stage of my life where
mm,
we have more than enough in our home. Let's share and let's get people in wherever they want to be.
Aichka. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. I know, um, I had the opportunity to come down and to Victoria, visit you in Victoria for your film showcases, and you carried that teaching. I came to simply support you, and came to say hi before the showcase started, and introduce my stall list to you, and you carried that teaching. You had some gifts to share, and you shared it with us so that we can pass those books on to the younger people in our lives. And so I appreciate you carrying through and following through with those teachings. So
Mm-hmm.
Aichka.
Yeah, must Hechka. So my publisher, Orca Book Publishers, I asked them to come because they're in Victoria, and I love working
Mhm,
with Orca. We got a beautiful new baby book coming out in the spring called "We Can't Wait to Hold You." And so I said, I'm doing this. We're going to be showing Three Feathers, our movie shot in Fort Smith. We're going to be showing Ink Hole for When the Starving Return, our movie with Amanda Strong. Can you please donate some of our baby books, because we have 5 baby books out so far with them, and We
mhm.
Can't Wait to Hold You will be our sixth. I didn't know they're going to show up with 2 boxes of books. So, I mean, that was a great night.
Yeah.
Anytime I can run around and gift away, and they know, I've got my favorite books with them, like The King of Jam Sandwiches
Mm,
by Eric Walters, and the Swano Bay graphic novel series. They gave us copies of that, and, Marty Chan books. So, big fan of Marty Chan. So, it was just a night to give away. And,
mm,
and I'm
mm,
just wanted to acknowledge Andrew Woolridge and Ruth Linka for their generosity, because they know I love to run around on stage and share good stories. They also
mhm,
know I love to give away beautiful baby books and books that they've published. So Masi Cho,
mm.
Orca, Yeah, they're
and
doing
Haichika.
beautiful work. Beautiful work.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Haichika to them as well. That was a very amazing night, and there was a lot of people who received a lot of amazing gifts that night, and so that was amazing to witness. And so yeah, thanks for the invitation to come out, and I was
Always
very
let you know. I always let you know when I'm coming.
yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it was really, like I said, it was a special night for me, and a special night for my stylist too, because it was she's a big fan of your work, and so to meet you in person, she was a little starstruck, and I love too, like, hearing her side of the story, because um she previously to working and checking in the work that we do here, she was at our community school, and she was a library assistant, and so she, along with the librarian that she worked with, had brought in a lot of your books into
Mm.
our school. So it was amazing to see and to hear her side of the story. So yeah, so thank you for sharing that, and just is there any other um, work that you have going on right now that you'd love to share with our listeners?
Well, George, I'm glad you asked. Now, I know we're getting near the end of our time together, but I just go through a couple of the books that we're working
Mm-hmm.
on?
Yeah.
So, culture is healing. That really is such a beautiful blanket to wrap ourselves in, you know, as we talk about this, because I'm really proud to work with translators from our community, Fort Smith, Northwest Territories. So I'm just going to show you how we're using pop culture to reclaim so much of our language, our teachings, and our traditions. So this is our little book, Little You, published by Orca Book Publishers. The
Mm-hmm.
artist is Julie Flett, and I wanted to work with Julie for years, and I
Mm-hmm.
finally had the opportunity. So this is the Bush Cree edition of Little You. And so if you see this and you're not Cree, that can be a little bit intimidating, but what we want you to know is we're publishing books where we have, look, it's so new, you can smell the ink and you can hear the pages. So this is in Bush Cree first, and then you have the English. So Little You, Little Wonder, etc., etc., etc. So I love it when we're publishing bridge literature. So for early language learners like myself, you can see the language, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can follow along in English. And of course, we have this as an audio book, so you can follow along in Bush Cree. I'm really grateful that we were able to work with Mary Cardinal as the translator from Fort Smith. I used to deliver papers to her house when I was a little boy. What a privilege. And so
Mm-hmm.
this is Spirit. So this is our graphic novel on suicide prevention. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can see that the artist is Emily Brown, who lives in Vancouver. And this is the Chipewyan version. So we have Spirit. So this is set in our community, Fort Smith.
Mm-hmm.
See the beautiful artwork. But when you turn it over, you have the Chipewyan edition.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the same artwork by Emily Brown, except you have the Dene Sutlane in all the dialogue boxes. And
Mm-hmm.
so for someone like me who really admires Chipewyan, you can follow along and go, in English you see nice, and then in Chipewyan you see nezu. And so you start building your confidence using a graphic novel that takes place in our community with people that look just like us. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're really proud of Spirit. And
Mm-hmm.
then this is our graphic novel, Three Feathers. And so Three Feathers is a graphic novel about restorative justice. And
Mm-hmm.
the artist is Neva Mateus. I met Neva when she was 15. And
Mm-hmm.
so this is the English edition about restorative justice. Look at her beautiful artwork. Oh my goodness. And then when you turn it over, this is the South Slavey edition. So
Mm-hmm.
you can, same thing, same artwork, but it's South Slavey. And Doris Camsel out of Hay River was our Slavey translator.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really proud of that. And what's really cool about the Slavey edition is there's an insert here where you can see the photos, because we've turned this graphic novel into a movie, which is what
Mm-hmm.
we showed at the Cine Center. And it is the only movie shot in 4 different languages. So our director is Carla Ulrich, and our producers are Brent Callback, Liz Levine. Our associate producer is Anne Lapini. And so this movie cost $500,000 to shoot in Fort Smith. And we
Mm,
shot in and around Fort Smith, mostly in Salt River. But it is the only movie that was ever shot in 5 languages. So imagine, George, if you auditioned for a movie and we say, congratulations, you got the part. It's going to be a 3 year commitment, and you're going to have to learn 3 new languages because we're going to shoot every scene in Bush Cree, take a
mm,
break. Then we're going to shoot it in Chipewyan, then we're going to take a break. Then we're going to shoot it in South Slavey. Then we're going to take a break. And then you get to shoot it in English. And by the way, you have to learn sign language because one of our main actors is deaf.
mm,
So we're really proud of Three Feathers because it's on APTN.
mm,
We only hired local, except for Tantu Cardinal. Tantu Cardinal got in touch and said, I really want to be in your movie, and my
mm,
name will help you get funding. And it certainly did. So huge Mussy Cho to Auntie, the best auntie of all time, Tantu Cardinal. So this is
mm,
the DVD set, and you can either watch it completely in English, which is what we showed at the Cinecenta,
mm,
or you can watch it in South Slavey. You can watch it in Chipewyan, or you can watch it in completely in Bush Cree with English subtitles. So
mm,
that's another example of bridge literacy in a way because you can watch the language. Let's say you're Chipewyan, let's say you're Dene Sutlane, is you can watch the movie completely in Chipewyan.
mm,
You can follow along in with English subtitles and you can hear it. You can hear the language.
mm,
So we're proud that it's on Northwest Tel TV. We're proud that it's on APTN. We sell the DVD. It's the only movie that was ever shot in 4 different languages. And we're really proud of it. And we only hired local, to have
mm,
Joel Evans from Fort Smith. He plays Larry in The Lesser Blessed. David Burke from Fort Smith. He stars in a movie called Cut Bank with Billy Bob Thornton and Bruce Dern. To have Dwight Moses, Connie Moses' son in the movie.
mm,
To have former chief of the Salt River First Nations, Henry Beaver, and his wife Eileen Beaver. Eileen used to babysit me when I was 13 months old, and
mm,
she's actually the translator for all the Chipewyan versions of our baby books and our graphic novels.
mm,
And I shared with you at the movie, I said to Eileen one day, I said, Auntie, did you ever think when you were babysitting me and my little brother Raj when I was 13 months old that one day
mm,
I'd help put you in a movie? And she said, you don't want to know what I was thinking when I was chasing you and your little brother around when you guys were kids. So that's the beauty
mm.
of community.
Yeah.
So, this is my book Gather, and this is my interviews with elders, miracle stories that are just jaw-droppingly beautiful. This is
Mm,
about me and on the joy of storytelling. So in here, I talk about the protocol of interviewing storytellers, the protocol of inviting knowledge keepers and elders into your classroom. There's a
mm,
lot of things that educators should really observe.
mm,
And so I love great horror. George, this is a wonderful anthology called Never Whistle at Night.
mm,
And I was lucky enough to get a short story in here called Scariest Story Ever. And I'm actually writing the intro for book 2. It's called Never Whistle at Night, Back for Blood. And
mm,
so I'm still going through the stories. They're terrifying,
mm,
they're brutal. I'm a huge fan of great horror. I'm really proud to write horror. And this is another anthology called Zegajimo. And this is published by Kegadons Press. And I've got a short story in here called Mouthless. And it's brutal. Oh
mm,
my goodness, I crossed some serious lines. And so I've asked my wife to never read these stories because she doesn't like scary stories. So she said, no problem there. I think sometimes, if we're lucky enough, we get to honor our heroes. And
mm,
if I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but this is called This Place 150 Years Retold. It's an illustrated encyclopedia published by Highwater Press. And we were all asked, what's the one story that Canadians know about, but they've never heard it from the Indigenous point of view? And I said, well, I know what I want to do. So in 1970, I was born 71. So 1975, I believe,
mm,
in Fort Good Hope, an elder and a chief, well, in those days he was only 28 years old. He's an elder now. Chief Frank Taselli gave one of the most beautiful speeches of our time during the Berger inquiry, and it's online. You can watch it on YouTube. And I remember discovering this in my 40s.
mm,
And I remember just getting so upset, going, why am I only hearing one of the greatest speeches of our time? I mean, this is right up there with Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream.
mm,
And I had this panic and I thought, I'm so glad that CBC videotaped it and uploaded it to YouTube. But
Mm,
if it's ever taken down, the world will lose this speech forever. And
mm,
so I thought, well, wait a minute. If we could just turn it into a movie, or sorry, a comic book, and hopefully a movie one day. So our comic is called Like a Razor Slash, and I
mm,
got to work with artist Scott Henderson, and I got to work with Frank Tiselli for 2 years. And he told us about how he put together. He had 3 days to write the speech. He had 3 days before, he was told in 3 days, Judge Thomas Berger in 1975 and oil executives are coming with CBC to listen about a proposal to put the Mackenzie Valley pipeline through Denendeh, through the Western Arctic. And the title, Like a Razor Slash, there was a Dene elder who stood at one of the hearings and said to put a pipeline through the Northwest Territories would be like putting a razor slash through the face of the Mona Lisa.
mm,
And that was the that everybody felt. And the show was over when she spoke. And anyways, we got to work with Frank Tiselli. He's a great grandfather now in
mm,
Fort Good Hope with his wife Bella. And he talked about the speech, and we now have it in comic book form so that students right across Canada get to hear about our relationship to the land, which has not changed at all. So, a couple things. I got a brand new story, brand new novel called Beast. And
mm,
were you a big fan of Stephen King growing up?
mm.
No, no
I'm no.
moya,
I
no.
was. I didn't get into the scarier stuff. I'm kind of much like your wife. I stay away from the scarier
Okay,
stuff a little bit.
well, I'll give you some Stephen King gossip. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember devouring Stephen King. I mean, one of my favorite of all his books is The Dead Zone. I love Firestarter, and I loved it until I got to the ending. So when I was a teenager, pumping gas at Kelly's, I would read 200 pages a day of Stephen
Mm,
King. I would limit myself, and especially when I was a guard for the RCMP. And so I remember reading it, and it's about teenagers going up against Pennywise the clown. And I remember
mm,
thinking, how on earth are they ever going to get out of this? I mean, what is this thing? And I remember getting to the end of it, and I'm not going to give this away, but when you read the ending of what Pennywise is, I remember I got so mad. I wanted to throw the book across the room. I was like, as freaking if. Like, how cheap. Really? That's it?
mm,
But I think it was 2 o'clock in the morning and my parents were sleeping. So I couldn't throw the book across the room. Plus, I'm a
mm,
Virgo. Okay. I'm a Virgo, very organized. So I just got mad. So Beast is really my answer to it because
mm,
I thought that Pennywise, once you see it, once you see what it is, in the forest, I had 30 years to plan the ultimate creature,
mm,
the ultimate spiritual being that
mm,
wants the world at war. And so Beast is about three teenagers. One is Tlicho, like myself, one is Métis and psychic, and the other is a Cree grass dancer. And it's about them facing an ancient spirit that's been called back by a small town bully. And they have to outsmart it using culture and
mm,
teachings and tradition. So, biggest thing I've ever written. I'm
mm,
really proud of it. It's just out. Really excited. I can't wait for somebody to buy the rights and turn it into a movie. My first novel, The Lesser Blessed, turns 30 next year.
mm,
I was told I'm the first Tlicho Dene to ever write a novel. I don't know if that's true. Hopefully it's if that's the case, we're all in big trouble. But the key here is that I'm breaking and I'm kicking down doors and breaking
mm,
trail for future novelists. The Lesser Blessed is a feature film. You can watch it on Amazon Prime. You can watch it on Paramount. You can watch it on iTunes. It's on APTN, I think, every once in a while. And I'm really proud to say we've sold TV and film rights to my graphic novel series, A Blanket of Butterflies.
mm,
And as I unfold you in petals, our artist is Scott Henderson. And also our colorist is Donovan Yachuk. And my publisher is Highwater Press out of Winnipeg. So, really quickly, I'll just make it quick. We have a real suit of samurai armor that was sent up to our community in Fort Smith. And there's three theories as to how it got there. I don't give two hoots, George, about how it got there.
mm,
My theory is that it was meant for the War Memorial Museum in Fort Smith, Arkansas, USA. I
mm,
think it was a clerical error that sent all these boxes of this armor to our museum, and it's still there.
mm,
We've been writing letters to people saying we have a real suit of samurai armor. I think it belongs either back in Japan or at the
Mhm.
Memorial Museum. I don't know if everybody's on strike at the Canadian Embassy in Tokyo. I don't know if everyone's on strike at this museum in Fort Smith, Arkansas, but we still have it. I've seen it. Pictures.
Mhm.
I've got pictures on my phone, and so I always say, the greatest question, one of the greatest questions we can ask ourselves as creators is what if? And I
Mhm.
just thought, what if a man from Japan named Shinobu came to our community, Fort Smith Museum,
Mhm.
and what if he had all the repatriation papers that showed that this was his family's, samurai armor?
Mhm.
And what if he came to escort it home to bring honor back to his family?
Mhm.
But what if on the day that he returns, he finds that the samurai sword that accompanied it was lost in a card game in
Mhm.
Fort Smith, Northwest Territories? What if the last museum director had a bit of a gambling problem? And what if he lost that katana in a card
Mhm.
game to a very dangerous man named Benny the Bank? And so Shinobu says, well, I can't bring my ancestors' armor home without the sword.
Mhm.
And the museum director says, sir, you don't understand. Benny the Bank, the man who won this, is very dangerous. His boys are ruthless,
Mhm.
they're vicious, and they probably know that you're here. Sir, I would suggest you just get on the plane and go home while you still can with the armor. And he says, I can't go home without that sword. And this
Mhm.
young boy who's Tlicho Dene named Sonny decides to help him. And I'll
Mhm.
just give you a little sneak peek. I'm not going to give away what happens, but if you read my short story collections, you meet these young men named Torchy and Sven. They're brothers, and then you meet a giant named Flinch. They all have their own short stories. And
Mhm.
so, as they're making their way to Benny's house, Shinobu was struck by an arrow. Look, remember in the 80s, we all wanted to be ninjas?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, ultimate fight scene between Shinobu, Torchy, and Sven. This shows the mastery of Scott Henderson, showing all the moves, right?
Mhm.
The dirty boxing, the kung fu, the donkey kicks, the bannock slaps. And Torchy and Sven were trained in a martial arts called the Dance of Pain. And
Mhm.
so that's how it starts. So I can't wait for Loretta Todd to turn this into a feature film and a TV series. And
Mhm.
then book two is called As I Unfold You in Petals. And it's about a young man named Curtis. His nickname is Runt because he's small. He's smaller than most men his age, but he's just come out of pound makers. He's just come out of treatment for alcoholism. And he just finished helping fight fires outside of our community in Fort Smith. And it's Benny's birthday, Benny the Bank's birthday, who's a big villain in my short stories.
Mhm.
And so the deal with Benny on his birthday is that if you can amaze him, he'll give you $20,000 cash.
Mhm.
And so on this particular day, we opened in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, my heartland, my homeland. There's our Fort Smith water tower. Half the town of Fort Smith is outside Benny's house. There's
Mhm.
Curtis. He's holding a box that smells like forest fire smoke. And he
Mhm.
goes into Benny's house, and there's Torchy, one of Benny's boys, watching Curtis very carefully. They hate each other, but you'll
Mhm.
find out why later on. And there's Benny the Bank. There's Flinch the Giant. There's $20,000 cash. There's Crow, which is Benny's girlfriend, his sweetheart. And the first thing Benny does is he offers Curtis a drink. And he says, you're looking thirsty, just like your daddy, just like your grandpa when they used to come by the house looking for a drink. You want a drink? Have a drink. It's my birthday. And Curtis says, no thanks, Benny. You sure? It's my birthday. Have a drink. And that's what Benny does. He uses your shame against you. He's just
Mhm.
letting you know. He knows that you're weak, you're fresh out of treatment, right? And so Curtis says, I have a gift for you for your birthday. And son of a gun, it's a watch. It's a
Mhm.
watch that Curtis found in the forest that Benny lost. One day, Benny was showing off years ago to men at a moose hunt, and they winged a moose when they were hunting, and they went tearing off into the bush after it. And Benny lost that watch. It was very expensive.
Mhm.
And he's always hired people to go and try and find that watch. And the men tease him because he thought he was good and he was boasting during that moose hunt about how much this watch cost him. Well,
Mhm.
Curtis finds it and Benny can't believe it. And he's just like, oh my God, like you have to know how long I've wanted to get this back. Curtis, oh my goodness, here you go. Here's $20,000. And then Curtis pushes the $20,000 back and says, I don't want your money, Benny.
Mm.
I want my grandfather's cabin, the one you won in a card game. And Benny says, son, I want you to listen to me very carefully. The little people are gone. The old ways are gone. Your grandpa was a powerful medicine man, and everyone knows a little people gave him his power.
Mm.
Son, listen to me. When my granddaughter, Lila Rose, was dying of cancer, I went back into your grandpa's house and I begged them with tears in my eyes to come back and save my little girl. Did they? No, she's gone. Son, it's over. Medicine power is gone. The old ways are gone. The little people have left. And Curtis says, I'm going to call them back, Benny.
Mm.
We have so much cancer, so much drugs in our communities now. We need their help. I'm going to call them back and I'm going to ask for their help. And he says, okay, son, last chance. Take the money. And Curtis says, I want the key to my grandpa's house.
Mm.
And Benny gives it to him. I'm not going to give too much away, but I'm just going to show you the beauty of Scott Henderson. When
Mm.
Curtis was in treatment, his grandpa came to him in a dream and gave him a song. So Curtis starts singing that song, and I'll leave it at that.
Mm.
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, we're really proud. So that's
Mm.
something I'm looking forward to. Shooting a feature film and a TV series with Loretta Todd as our visionary. And my biggest dream come true, as well as Beast and everything else we've been working on, is this graphic novel called We to Go War Roth. And so I've been collecting comic books for probably 45 years. And
Mm.
one of my biggest, I mean, I've got so many heroes like Kent Williams and George Pratt and Bill Sankovich, but one of my biggest heroes is Christopher Shy. And so I'd been working on this graphic novel series for a long time, and he knows I'm one of his biggest fans on planet Earth. And I got in touch with him, and I found a publisher, Renegade Arts Entertainment, here in Canmore, Alberta. Thank goodness for Alexander Finbow. Remember when we were kids and you'd see the new heavy metal magazine?
Mm.
Everything that they publish feels to me like heavy metal. They there's no limit on what they're willing to do. They're willing to work with everybody, and we were able to approach Christopher Shy and say, look, we've written 3 books in this series. You've always been my dream artist for this series, and I'll show you some of the artwork. This is probably unlike any of the graphic novels that you've seen before.
Mm.
Christopher has his own medicine in the world, and this is about a man who's Tlicho. His name is Ross, and he's known as the Child Finder. So he's single-handedly helped find over 500 kids who have
Mm.
been abducted for human trafficking or kidnapping, abduction, and he's a hero.
Mm.
And the tar sands have dug up the Wetago. Those are starving creatures, and they're in and around and invading Edmonton. And Ross is bit by a Wetago, but
Mm.
because he's holding rat root, which is one of our boss medicines, he only
Mhm.
half turns. And so this is about a man who is half Wetago, who has all their strength and has a bit of their medicine, and
Mm.
he knows what they want. He can see why they're back.
Mhm.
Um, this is really a story about fatherhood, and this is really a story about being a husband and a father and what
Mm.
you would do to get your family back. And the beautiful thing about We To Go War Book One is we got to work with, people from my community. So we got all the actors from Three Feathers. So we got to work with
Mm.
Dwight Moses, Henry Beaver, David Burke, and Joel Evans from The Lesser Blessed. And we also got to work with Mila Antoine, who stars in The Revenant.
Mm.
She's the chief's daughter. And so she agreed to be one of our models. And so this is such a dream come true. I love horror. This is a pretty brutal book, but it's a,
Mhm.
it's a book woven with love. There's Henry Beaver.
Mm.
To get the former chief of the Salt River First Nations to star in a movie like Three Feathers,
Mm.
to model for Christopher Shy is really a dream come true. And so the key here is that if Roth Roth is his Wheatigo name. That's what the Wheatigo call him.
Mm,
If Ross drops that rat root, he turns full Wheatigo, and
mm,
then he will turn on his own family to eat them.
mm,
So absolutely incredible. So we're doing a lot of great stuff. What I love
mhm,
about being an artist and a writer and an entrepreneur is you never know what's going to happen next. You never know if somebody's going to ask you to work on a new book or to work with a different illustrator on something or to help edit a screenplay or a movie. Every day is different for me. And
mm,
I can't remember, at 53, I can't remember a time I've been more grateful for all that I have. And I think that that is the best medicine of all. Gratitude, humility, wanting to help people, never wanting to take, only wanting to uplift. I think
mm,
that's a really beautiful way because once you turn 53, you start to wonder, how do I want to be remembered?
mm,
How do I want to be known? Do I want to be known as a trustworthy man? Absolutely. Do I want to be known as somebody who looked out for others and really advocated for them? Absolutely. So
mhm,
that's what I'm working on now. Culture
mm,
is healing, George. It really is
mm.
true. Masi Cho.
Aichka, Aichka, thank you for sharing. Yeah, and thank you all so much for taking the time to come and sit in circle with me, and thank the listeners for yet again tuning in on a regular basis to the Culture is Healing podcast. And I look forward to catching you all in the next episode. Take care, everyone. Thank you,
Masi
Richard.
Cho. Thank you.
Aichka.
Thanks, George. Masi.
Ewe.